Good afternoon, and welcome to California Certified Organic Farmers Demystifying Organic Certification for Processors webinar. We're very excited to have you here today. We have two great presenters that will introduce you to the basics of organic certification for processors. But before we begin, I wanted to give a warm thank you to our sponsor, Valent USA Corporation. Valent USA Corporation is a leading crop protection firm serving the agricultural and non-crop production markets in North America. Valent offers organic growers a wide range of valuable tools to improve and protect their crops. Valent is committed to producing solutions that meet the Organic Materials Review Institute listing qualifications or other local or state organic certification specifications. So thank you very much, Valent. And we also wanted to make sure everybody's connected. So if you're having difficulties connecting to the webinar, if you can't hear or can't see, please call our office for support. Our phone number is 831-423-2263. And just press the 0 for the operator so you don't have to listen to our very long message. And someone will help you connect to the webinar. So my name is Megan Donovan. I'll be your host today. I'm a program assistant at CCOF, California Certified Organic Farmers. CCOF is the oldest organic certification organization in the United States. We envision a world where organic is the norm, and we do this through organic certification, promotion, advocacy, and education. We are very excited to have our two wonderful presenters here this afternoon. We have Christine Coltellaro from CCOF and Ellen Roggemann from McEvoy of Marin. And I will introduce each speaker in more depth prior to their presentation. But first, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's webinar. We're looking at an example of the GoToWebinar attendee interface, which is made up of two parts. There's the viewer window on the left, which allows you to see everything the presenter will share on the screen, and the control panel on the right. Within the control panel is how you can participate in today's event, so we'll go ahead and take a look at that. By clicking on the orange arrow, you can open and close the control panel. You can also, from the View menu, set the control panel not to auto-hide when it's inactive if you prefer to have it open all the time. The audio pane provides audio information. By default, you have joined the webinar via a mic and speakers. Click the audio setup to select your computer speaker or headset devices. If you prefer, you can join the audio via telephone by selecting Use Telephone, and then the dial information will be displayed below. During the presentation, at the end of each presenter's presentation and at the end of the presentation, you'll have the ability to send questions to our webinar staff through the questions pane. You simply type in your question, press send, and we will field those questions to the presenters. And feel free to type in during any point at the webinar, and we'll kind of collect those and make sure they get asked when we're at a question break. And you can also raise your hand if you'd like to get our attention as well. And just a reminder that we will be recording this webinar, so after it's been recorded and processed, we'll send out a link so that everybody can watch it again whenever you feel like. So let's just do a quick check using the questions pane. If you could tell us what products you process, manufacture, or handle, and what you most want to learn today. We'll kind of touch base with those after our first presenter. And thank you very much for being here. We're excited. We have are awesome presenters, and they have a whole lot of experience with organic certification and record keeping. So without further ado, let me introduce Christine Coltellaro. Christine is a handler certification and client service specialist with CCOF. During her 4 years at CCOF, Christine has held positions in outreach, policy advocacy, executive administration, and organic certification. Prior to CCOF, Christine managed a production garden, taught teenagers environmental education, and worked extensively in the restaurant industry. Christine holds a degree in environmental studies with a focus on agriculture from the University of Washington, Seattle. She currently lives in Portland, Oregon. And just to say, because Christine works for CCOF, she's going to be giving the CCOF perspective on things. But we always like to encourage people when they're shopping for a certifier to do their homework and kind of take a look of the other certification organizations out there. There's about 50 in the United States, so there's lots of options. So thank you, Christine, and I look forward to your presentation.
All right. Thank you, Megan. Thanks for that introduction, and thanks to all of you out there in computer land for joining in. I'm going to go ahead and start with a slide that represents who I work for. Megan touched on it a little bit. CCOF is the oldest and largest U.S. certifier. We were founded in 1973 in Santa Cruz, California, but we certify operations throughout North America. Our structure is a little bit unique. CCOF is comprised of 3 entities. We have our Certification Services, which is our certifying entity, our CCOF Inc., which is our membership organization and houses our board of directors, provide member services such as our website, accounting services, outreach, advocacy, events, and clients are automatically part of our membership program. And we also have the CCOF Foundation who's putting on this webinar. They are our charitable nonprofit wing focused on education and general do-gooder work. We currently have over 3,000 certified clients, and we've been an active player in the organic movement here in the U.S., and we have over 2 million certified acres. All right, as the title of this webinar suggests, we are here to demystify or clarify organic certification for processors in 1.5 hours. My presentation is going to focus first on some definitions and a brief history of organic and our regulatory structure. Then I'll go over some common areas that our handler department experiences from processors, some common question areas. It's not possible for me to cover everything, so I do encourage you to jot down specific questions as they come up, because as Megan noted, we'll have time for those at the end. And I'm also just going to touch on some basic requirements for processor handler organic system plan and an overview of the process. And again, your questions will come at the end. Okay, so first off, I want to clarify some, whoops, sorry, there we go. Okay, I want to clarify, what is a processor? Processor will include activities that you may have guessed, such as cooking, baking, canning, slaughtering, fermenting. Also includes maybe some processes that aren't as popular. Heating, drying, packaging, even labeling is considered a process under the processor handler scope. Pretty much further adding value to raw product is considered processing. So here's kind of just a collage of things that could come under the handler scope, and I want to draw your attention to that bottom left-hand corner, the laptop and files. That represents brand owners or brokers, people that don't actually physically touch or handle the product. They might move product from one place to another. These people, you have the option of getting certified if you're one of these folks. I see that we increasingly have more and more brokers and handlers getting certified, either as pressure from their customers or just to kind of keep integrity throughout the supply chain. But I did want to point that out. Okay, so I want to start out with some definitions, and here is a slide that basically breaks the cardinal rule of PowerPoint. It's text heavy, and I'm going to read it to you. But these definitions are important. For example, just to keep in mind throughout my presentation, organic is a labeling term that refers to an agricultural product produced according to USDA regulations. Organic production is a production system that is managed in accordance with those regulations, integrating cultural, biological, and mechanical practices that foster cycling of resources, promote ecological balance, and conserve biodiversity. A handling operation is any operation or portion of an operation that receives or otherwise acquires agricultural products and processes, packages, or stores such products. And an organic system plan is a plan of management of an organic production or operation that has been agreed to by the producer and the certifying agent, and that includes written plans concerning all aspects of agricultural production or handling. Okay, so keep those definitions in mind throughout the presentations, and now I'm going to talk about how this all got started. Okay, the history is important and it's relevant. Farmers worldwide, they've been developing and communicating organic farming systems for decades. And about the time of the Second World War, farming methods started to become more reliant on chemical inputs. As a result to harmful human and environmental effects of those inputs, modern organic farming movement began to take root. You might have heard the name J.I. Rodale, started the Rodale Institute in 1947 to study the link between healthy food, soil, and people. So this has been kind of going on for a long time. And we don't really see the grassroots movement start to take place until about the 1970s in general, is when we started to see more organized grassroots action on a local level. For example, as I mentioned earlier, CCOF was formed in 1973 by a group of farmers on the Central Coast, and they just developed internal systems for vetting each other before it was a national standard. So during this time, organic systems were staying pretty localized, but a lot was happening on this local level that eventually began to expand the organic movement. Jumping ahead to the early 1990s and 2000s, we see organic standards start to take shape on a federal level. Some important pieces of legislation to note are the Organic Foods Production Act, which became law in 1990. This law established the formation of the National Organic Program under the USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service, which is responsible for administering and enforcing a regulatory framework of this act. The act also established the formation of the NOSB, which is a voluntary citizen advisory committee appointed by the Secretary of Agriculture, whose primary focus is to set the standards and substances on the national list of allowed materials, which I know some of you know about, and I'll discuss shortly when we talk about materials. The NOSB also makes recommendations on a variety of other standards. Another big important legislative issue to note is the first draft of the organic standards, which included the big three. Now, the big three in organic are the prohibition of GMOs, sewage sludge, and radiation in organic production. Not omitting these practices in the organic standards created a huge public pushback with over 275,000 responses during its public comment period. And eventually, because of that pressure, the revised draft included the prohibition of the big three in organic production. And then in 2002, the standards were implemented. Okay, here is a simple schematic to demonstrate how the national organic standards are carried out or enforced. You have the federal government entity there at the top, the NOSB Advisory Committee, which provides recommendations to them. And then we have the certifiers. Certifiers, like the one I work for, CCOF, are agents of the USDA that are issued federal licenses to certify to the NOP standard. We as certifiers are accredited to uphold and maintain organic integrity, and we are audited just like you guys, just like we audit our clients. So it's important to know that. The standards actually outline requirements not only for organic production, but they also cover standards for certifying agencies and administrative requirements of the NOP. Okay, so this brief, very brief cultural snapshot and history of the regulations is really to emphasize two things. One, that organic is a movement that's deeply rooted in the goal of an agricultural system which preserves the natural environment and does not pose risk to human health. And two, that organic is a federally regulated standards. Certifiers do not make these rules. We all certify to the same rules. Okay, so now that you know why you're here in the world of organic certification, I want to touch on kind of the how, the nuts and bolts, if you will, of organic certification for processors and highlight some of those areas of processing where organic production really matters. And we'll start with probably the most common question that I get from clients with the national list of allowed and prohibited substances. So organic regulations largely require the use of only organic inputs in organic processing. However, there are some exceptions made because of a lack of a natural or organic alternative, or it's just something that's necessary in production and can't be organically, such as salt. Can't really produce salt according to national standards. And this is where the national list comes in. So the national list basically identifies non-organic materials that can be used in organic production. I will say here that I use the term materials to refer to a broad range of things: non-organic processing aids, ingredients, also cleaners, sanitizers, and pest control materials. Items currently on the national list, I've tried to give an example of some there on the right: chia seeds, kombu seaweed, yeast, carbon dioxide, diatomaceous earth. All these things are allowed and they're on the national list. Now, the national list changes, so if you do want to keep tabs on this, I would suggest a shortcut on your computer or something, because the online version is always current. The national list was formed by the NOSB originally after years of extensive research and engagement by everyone in the supply chain. Now remember, the NOSB is the National Organic Standards Board. Materials on the national list must be fully vetted by the NOSB. They undergo a public comment period, and they're not official until they're adopted by the USDA. So once they're approved for the national list, an allowed material will be reviewed in another 5 years. So it doesn't stay on indefinitely. It's reviewed in another 5 years to determine if it should stay on or come off. And this process is known as the sunset process. So materials can get considered for the national list by being petitioned. That largely comes from the organic community, you guys, organic businesses. And the NOSB meets twice a year. So non-organic processing aids and ingredients on the national list used in organic production cannot be produced using the big three. So down there I've kind of outlined them again below: no radiation, no sewage sludge, and no GMOs. And you must provide this documentation to your certifier when you're asking for a substance to be reviewed, to be allowed in your organic system plan. Okay. So I'm going to go in now to organic labeling claims. There's 4 types of organic labeling claims. 3 of those main types really are the ones that I'm going to focus on. And they each reflect a percentage of certified organic ingredients in your product formula. So you can make one of these 3 organic claims on your product. First, we have 100% organic. Actually, I think the U.S. is the only certifying standards that allow this labeling claim. I know it's not allowed in Europe or Canada, but this basically contains only 100% certified organic ingredients. On this label, you can use the USDA and your certifier seal, but you do have, this product can't be processed with any of those national list ingredients that I just mentioned. This must be just pure certified organic ingredients. The next, and probably the more common labeling claim, is organic, and this is 95% or more organic ingredients would comprise a product that carries the organic labeling claim, and that 5% or less of the ingredients must be on the national list. So this labeling claim can also carry the USDA and or certifier seal. And then we have the made with organic claim. At its simplest explanation, 70% or more organic ingredients must contain a product that carries the Made with Organic claim. And on the front of the ingredient panel, it has to call out those specific ingredients. So the example here is made with organic oats and soybeans. So this can only carry the certifier seal, and it's pretty nuanced. So I would recommend doing a little bit more research on this, or please ask me some questions if you have any questions about the Made with Organic claim. But for the purpose of this webinar, I'm just going to explain it that way and move on. And then the last one, again, I don't see it very often because these products don't necessarily need to be approved by your certifier, but it's an ingredient panel only. So say maybe one ingredient in your product is organic. You can say that in the organic ingredient statement. And just know that you should have the certificate to back that up. And I'll talk about certificates here in a minute. But sticking with the labeling claim area, I want to talk about some common errors that I see a lot in labeling. And one is the ingredient panel must list all organic ingredients. You can list this by saying organic in front of the ingredient, or denote it in some way like an asterisk, or I've seen a little 1 up at the top of you know, kind of a subscript or something like that, and then giving a key somewhere else on the ingredient panel that says that that equals organic. Another common area that that I see missed is the certifier statement. For shorthand, we call it the COV statement. This is basically a statement of who this product is certified by. So certified organic CCOF. And this statement, it's very specific, must come directly below the company contact information with no intervening text or graphics. So you can see the example there. There's a website, and a website is considered company contact information. At least CCOF considers it that. And you see that the certified organic by statement comes directly below that with nothing in between. And you can also use the certifier seal or logo in place of those words CCOF. We've gotten a couple of those coming through and have determined internally that that's okay. Okay, I'm going to jump to another common area of concern. You know, a lot of processors might process both organic and non-organic ingredients, and preventing commingling is really important, and you must show in your organic system plan that you can successfully prevent commingling in your production. So commingling would be organic materials with non-organic product or prohibited material. This can include cleaning supplies too. One specific cleaning supply that I look out for are cleaners that are not rinsed off. They generally contain quaternary ammonia, which is prohibited in organic production. And so, you know, for that you must demonstrate that you can completely remove any quaternary ammonia residue in your cleaning process, or switch to an approved organic cleaner. Here's a couple examples of ways to do this. These photos that I put on this slide are taken from actual CCOF operations. So we see kind of clear labeling of where organics are stored. Sometimes people will process organic on a certain day, or there on the right, everything organic in this operation has that little yellow tag on it. Down below, it's a dedicated production line. If you have the resources to do that, that's a pretty clear way to make sure that there's no commingling going on. And yeah. Okay. Supplier certificates. I mentioned that, I think, in the previous slide about certified organic ingredients. So for each organic ingredient that you use in your product, you must submit to your certifier a complete and current organic certificate, which verifies the organic status of the ingredient you'd like to use. So what do I mean by complete and current? Certificates, they come in all different formats, and when we look for complete, we generally look for the certificate. A lot of these come in 2 different pages, a certificate page there on the left and a client profile, or could often be called a product summary or product list there on the right, and that lists the products that particular operation is certified organic for. So I've kind of numbered them here, and hopefully if you get this, you can reference it as to what we look for in a certificate. So there, the supplier name is listed, and if there are any other iterations of the name, they're generally listed on the certificate as well. You have the organic standard that this operation is certified for. So here it's the USDA NOP. You may also see international standards listed on their certificate. You have an issue date. So CCOF generally accepts certificates as current if that issue date is no more than 15 months old. Certification never expires, by the way, I'll just mention that, but new certificates are issued on an annual basis. Certification only, so this is essentially, not current, and the only way that somebody can become not certified is if they withdraw or they get suspended, things like that. Where are we at here? Number 4, brand name. This is also pretty important. If you are specifying a certain branded product that you source, the brand name has to be listed on the certificate. And then up there, circle it products organic. This kind of references the labeling claim that I discussed earlier. Products are going to be categorized in terms of their labeling claim on their client profiles or product summary there. And then also on the far right, number 6, you see compliances. This kind of connects to the organic standard that's listed on our certificate page, and that would be, NOP or an international standard as noted. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the audit trail. Basically, since inspectors can't have eyes on your operation all the time, we rely heavily on an operation's readily available, comprehensive audit trail system. So your audit trail system should be able to trace an organic product from receipt of raw ingredients throughout production to point of sale. And that's kind of outlined here. So in this particular audit trail example, the organic ingredients and the product is kept track of by a lot number. So you see it's coming in, and that lot number is recorded throughout various stages of production. So the audit trail is pretty essential, and it will be included on all of your inspections to have a readily available, comprehensive audit trail. So going back to what I mentioned about brokers and maybe brand owners, people that might contract out their product, or people that don't really touch the product, this is essentially your inspection, is your audit trail. In order for you to be certified organic, this must be approved by your inspector. Or excuse me, it's actually not approved by your inspector, it's going to be approved by us, the reviewers at CCOF, or your chosen certifier. Lastly, records must be maintained for not less than 5 years beyond the product's creation. Okay, so I realize as I'm listening to myself talk about all these things, that verbalizing these criteria sound a lot more intense than they actually are in production, especially as we're entering the age of increased food safety requirements. I find that processors often don't have a hard time implementing procedures to prevent commingling, or making sure their audit trail documents are in line. It's really just a matter of the review and approval process. Okay, so this kind of concludes my areas of focus for organic production, and the next slide I'm going to go into is kind of putting it all together, an overview of how all these parts and then some fit into your organic system plan. So there on the right is kind of what would comprise a processor OSP, a general product description, you have a general operation description, you have your products and labels, materials and ingredients, suppliers and supplier certificates, your organic process flow, which would outline how you make your product, and then your record keeping requirements. So I know there's some people on the webinar who may not have started this process yet. I just wanted to say that we tell prospective clients that this process takes usually about 60 to 90 days with that initial application. Upon approval of your application, your initial inspection will be scheduled. The inspector submits their observations to the certifier in the form of an inspection report, which is reviewed by certification staff and results ultimately in a certification decision. Certification is it's maintained throughout the year through OSP updates, so you'd be sending those into your certifier for review and approval. I'll go over a little bit about, kind of flesh that out a little bit more in the next slide. Okay, so kind of the in-between time managing your OSP. In between your annual inspections, you're responsible for maintaining your OSP. So when things change in your organic system plan, you need to submit this information to your certifier for review and approval before proceeding. Some examples of what you may need to submit to your certifier are, really that first one covers it, kind of any change in organic operations that you'll need to submit for approval, such as if you add or remove a facility. That one's pretty important. Adding or removing new equipment or processes, and adding or removing products, labels, ingredients, or materials. It's very important that you get these into your certifier as soon as possible so that you can either hear back, maybe you've missed something or something like that. So it's always a good idea to get these in and to get them approved before you move forward. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about cost here. These are just examples of CCOF fees. If you have another certifier or if you go with another certifier, their fee structure may be a little bit different. Initially, there's an application fee. This is a one-time fee. It doesn't happen again. It's just to cover the processing of the initial applications. It's non-refundable, and upon acceptance and approval, your annual certification fee will be billed. So this is, let's see, that second bullet is kind of our average inspection costs, just so you know. These are in addition to your certification annual fees. And then that third bullet kind of outlines our fee structure. Our fees are based on gross organic production value for certified products. And so actually I wanted to point out this is for, these examples I'm giving are for processing operations. So our lowest fee is $650 per year. So, cost is a factor. I hear it all the time, not only in my job, but when I talk to vendors at local farmers markets. I try not to interrogate them, but I'm often just curious why some people may not get certified. And really, the answer I hear the most is cost and then paperwork. People don't like paperwork very much. So I just wanted to point out that last bullet. If this seems like a challenge, don't fret, because your dedicated policymakers in Congress approved the Certification Cost Share Program. This program is a big deal. Through an application and approval, you can get up to 75% of your certification cost reimbursed. And to find out more about this program, I suggest you contact your certifier about it, or very simply, you can Google it. There's information on the internet about it all the time, and it's a use it or lose it program. So I really highly encourage you to look into this if you're thinking about getting certified. Don't let cost be an obstacle. All right, I'm going to wrap up here with some general tips on being a certified organic operation. Firstly, be proactive and get involved, kind of bringing this around. I know that organic certification is probably only part of your job, and maybe even only one certification that you have to manage. However, organic is it's a movement toward a healthier environment, and staying engaged really ensures that organic will remain in demand in the marketplace and that it's a reliable label. It's not a fad. Participating in advocacy efforts really ensures that legislatures will respond to the needs of organic businesses, and this really comes from you guys. You're the businesses, and you're very relevant to the process. In general, see this industry is really built on the ethos of continuous improvement, and that really comes from within, from folks who are organic. There are a lot more resources about that if you want to check it out. CCOF has a quarterly magazine. I know there are other certifiers that have magazines as well with a lot of good information in it. You can sign up for National Organic Program emails. The Organic Trade Association is also a really good place to start if they have a great website that's pretty comprehensive. And also our website, CCOF, has some great information on staying involved. Another great way to make this process go smoother is to be prepared for your inspections. Really know your OSP and get organized for those inspections. Inspectors are billed by the hour if that helps to motivate you. So having your ducks in a row really ensures that you have an efficient inspection. Submit updates to your certifier as soon as possible. A good example is labels. For instance, labels need to be approved before they can be used. So submit final drafts before going to print, before printing out thousands of labels of something when there might just be a common labeling error that was missed. And lastly, communicate with your certifier. This is really important. Organic certification is voluntary. Certifiers are not out to bust you for being compliant. We're accredited to uphold the standards, but we also want to make sure that you are always compliant. And this really helps solidify organic integrity in the marketplace. And it also ensures for you a smoother certification process. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say about that. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and ask questions. Okay. Thank you so much for listening to this first portion, and I guess I can take questions now. Megan, do we have any questions?
Yes, thank you again, and we have a number of questions, and feel free to type in if you have more questions at this time, and also we'd love to know kind of where you are in the certification process. Are you just starting, or have you done this for a while and just kind of looking to update your systems? But just to let you know, Christine, we have a number of different industries out there. We have an organic grain producer, some berry producers, a tomato processing operation, carrot operation, and processed juices, nut milks, and chips. So a good diversity of folks out there.
Yeah.
And so someone wrote in asking if you could define the difference between an inspector and a reviewer. Who do they work for? Who do you communicate with kind of during your application and certification process?
Yes, good question. So I am a reviewer. I work for CCOF, for the certifying agency. Inspectors are third-party contracted. They are accredited on their own to go out and perform organic inspections. So they are essentially gathering observations. They don't make a decision. The reviewers actually make the decision. So I want to make sure that answered your question. Did that answer your question?
All right, well, we'll see. Yes, yep.
Okay, great.
And then another person was wondering, is the supplier certificate something you get from the supplier, or where should they get the supplier certificate?
They should get the supplier certificate, you're right, from your supplier.
Okay.
Yeah, they should have those on hand. Just like if you were supplying an organic product to somebody else, you would give them your organic certificate that proves you are certified for the product that you are supplying.
Great. And then there was a question on commingling. Can you run an organic line of product after a conventional line of product?
Yes, you can, but you have to document that a thorough clean-out was performed. This is usually outlined in a standard operating procedure or something like that. You'll need to say, between organic and non-organic runs, we clean with XYZ certifier, and then, or XYZ cleaner, and then we rinse it down, things like that. So yes, you can, but you must, must perform a thorough clean.
And then you also keep records of that, correct? Of your cleaning procedures?
Yes, because yes, you will. And I'll mention too, one other way to clean out between organic and non-organic runs is a purge process. This is common with maybe equipment that grinds, like a nut grinder or a coffee grinder or something like that. You can't really spray cleaner in or can't really spray water in. You would have to run a certain amount of organic product through to basically purge out the non-organic product, and you could not sell the results of that purge as organic. Please let me know if I clarified that and answered your question okay.
All right, yeah, that was great.
Okay.
And then also, what is the fee structure for a brand name owner?
It's the same. It's based on your organic production value. So if you're taking title to that organic product and you're making money from it, that's what we base your fee structure on.
Okay, and then sort of related to that, do manufacturers typically charge brand name owners to add their products to the manufacturer's certificate?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Do manufacturers typically charge brand name owners to add their products to the manufacturer's certificate?
I don't know that I'm the best person to answer that question. I think that would be, you'd probably want to, maybe you can ask Ellen that. I don't know, since she's since she actually does, she's actually from an organic operation. But honestly, that's kind of an arrangement between a brand owner and their contracted manufacturer.
Okay, great, thanks. And then, what does it mean that organic certificates do not expire?
It's a tough one to answer, but I talked about how inspections are held on an annual basis. So I think I kind of breezed through that slide really quick, but so you have an annual inspection, and then that inspection report comes in, and then the reviewer reviews it, and then we issue you your new certificate at, once that is approved. So that new certificate has that date on it, and that's your new, your updated certificate. So the current status is really to reflect kind of that changeover process when you have you're going through your annual audit, so another one's going to come up and have a newer date on it. So just because a certificate isn't old, I often hear somebody will say, oh, the certificate's over a year old, it's no good anymore. That's not necessarily the case. They may just be going through their annual audit and they'll need an updated certificate. So just because a certificate is old doesn't mean that a certain operation is not still certified. It just means that actual piece of paper is old. Does that answer your question, or do you want to follow up?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
So we have another question. We have two process lines. One is finished, one is in construction. Can we certify only one line?
Yes, you can. I mean, I know that's really simple. Yeah, you can certify that one processing line. However, when that other one becomes able to be used, more than likely you'll have to get it also inspected. So you're looking at, you're looking at that. You're looking at a potential of having, two inspection costs.
Okay. Good to know. And then we have another question that came in that says, we are putting a currently certified product into a larger package with a new label. Do we need to get a new label certified?
Yes.
Okay.
So wait, can you repeat that question and make sure that I answered it?
Yes. We are putting a currently certified product into a larger package with a new label.
Yes.
Do we need to get the new label certified? Okay.
Yes. And so you would need to get the new, maybe a better word to say is approved. You would need to get that approved. So okay. You would need to submit that label to your certifier in order to get it approved.
All right. Great. And then we're going to take one last question, and if anything other questions come up, we'll get those at the end of the presentation.
Okay.
So the final question is, if we have a product that is not currently in production, but will be in the spring, can we still get that product certified with an OSP and all the required documentation?
Yeah. If all those same processes and ingredients are still true, still the same down the line, then you can get it approved. So what we're approving is your label and your ingredients, and then hopefully if you're already a certified client, the process is approved already. So it would just be a matter of making sure that you're still using what you said you were using when you initially submitted it for approval.
Okay, great. So thank you again, Christine. And again, Christine will be available at the end of the presentation for any other questions related to her presentation. So thank you, and I would like to introduce Ellen Roggemann. Ellen is an organic compliance specialist and project manager at McEvoy of Marin for both their handler and grower operations. In this role, she has both built organic record-keeping systems from scratch and updated record-keeping systems that needed additional functionality. Instead of viewing organic certification as a pile of paperwork, Ellen likes to see it as a system and continually asks, how can we capture the correct information easily in the process of our normal day? An urban environmental policy graduate from Occidental College, Ellen is a frequent speaker at the Stone Barns Center of Food and Agriculture and the Food Craft Institute. She works to create organic record-keeping solutions with other growers and processors through the radicalradish.com. So thank you very much for being here today, Ellen, and I will pass it over to you. See, Ellen, are you there?
Hi, sorry, the unmute took a second. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you, and thank you, Christine, for a great presentation. It's always a good thing to have a refresher, and I always seem to learn something new as well. So let's see. Go to the start. Okay, so my name again is Ellen, and I work for McEvoy of Marin, which has two brands, McEvoy Ranch and 80 Acres. McEvoy Ranch is our olive oil and wine, our two biggest products that come from the 550-acre ranch in Petaluma. That was started in 1993 by Nantucker McEvoy. And 80 Acres is a body care line, an olive oil body care line that we produce from our own manufacturing facility in Ukiah. And we've been certified organic since 1999, starting with our olive mill. So while we grow and mill, we're actually a processor because that's how our certification started. I am going to talk through a few things today. So I'll do a brief why we're organic, and then go through three of our product lines to show how we incorporate organic into multiple types of production flows. Our way of doing it isn't the only way. I'm hoping that by sharing the way that we do it, you can see that from all different types of production, there's a way to incorporate organic that isn't a headache. And then I'll go over some tips and best practices. So just briefly why we chose to be organic. It started definitely as an ideals thing. Nan, our founder, was very committed to sustainable agriculture and wanted everyone to know that and wanted there to be a way for someone to know that, you know, what we said, was actually what we were practicing. And it has since then it's still definitely because of the ideals, but I think more and more we're finding that it really does differentiate ourselves in the marketplace, especially with the body care line, which we are in the process now of getting certified as made with organic. That actually came from stores telling our salesperson for the body care that, you know, there's so many small, interesting, handcrafted companies out there. What makes yours different? And it's really having that third-party certification. Even some stores that won't allow a product in unless there's some sort of certification, whether it's organic or there's a whole host of them when it comes to body care. So as we've grown and been more in wholesale accounts, it's been very important to have a label to communicate with customers that we'll never meet face-to-face. As I've touched upon briefly, we have a diverse organic experience at the ranch. We are both a grower and a handler. So as a grower, we have organic vineyards, orchards, gardens with fruits, flowers, and vegetables that we sell to restaurants. And we also have wild-crafted areas, and we make wreaths from these areas. And then as a processor or a handler, we mill our own 100% organic olive oil. We also contract mill organic and non-organic olive oil on that same machinery. We have a jam line that's certified organic and dried fruits, and for that line we actually rent shared kitchen space, so that kind of brings up a whole other host of things to think about when making sure we're in compliance. And our newest addition, as I said, is our body care facility. And in that facility, we're producing both organic and non-organic body care products that are under our label. So we basically, for such a small operation, have kind of all the different, in like little, other than that we don't have dairy, I think, we have all the different hiccups that you could have with organic and things you have to sort through to figure out how to make sure that you stay in compliance. And we sell in a variety of locations as well, which just diversifies how we have to track things. So we have our own retail locations, we sell online, and we also sell through wholesale. So one of the first questions I get from people is kind of how do we manage so many different pieces. And one thing that we do is each department is in charge of keeping their OSP current. But I'm the one contact with CCOF. You don't have to do it that way, but we found that that was just easier over time to have one person who's always getting all the up-to-date information and making sure that all the different departments are in compliance. So let me just make sure I touched upon everything that I wanted to with that. Yes. So here's a basic product flow that I'm going to go through with our product lines. So you start with product development, develop the product, then we're getting labels and products added to our profile, sourcing and ordering ingredients, receiving an ingredients, or harvesting ingredients depending on what product it is, then storing the ingredients, running production, packaging and labeling, bringing that finished product into inventory, storing it, and then selling it. So this product flow, each part of a product flow like this, there's some aspect that organic comes up, and that there's, you know, some amount of just steps you have to take to show you're doing it in a way that is in compliance. And I'm going to go through this product flow with, like I said, 3 of our product lines. So the first one I'll talk about is our preserves. So we started this jam line to capture the more adventurous side of our Bay Area customers, because our olive oil is the same every year. Our wines, like coming out with a new wine all the time is a little bit more tricky, where the jams, we could be changing recipes every year, have products just once that we're not going to have again, and really make it interesting. So this was a very varied product line, 2 to 3 products that were stable every year, and then other ones that, like I said, maybe we'll make it once and it's, 500 jars and we're going to make it 1 year and never again. So the type of record keeping we wanted was something that was really flexible, not something that took all this time to set up in a computer system. So this was all done by hand. And for this jam line, we had chunks of production, meaning, we made Meyer lemon marmalade for 3 months, and then there was a 2-month gap, and then we made plum preserves. So staff was changing frequently. It had to be a record-keeping system that was pretty easy to use and foolproof. And prep was done separately at the ranch in a prep space, a certified prep space, and then cooking was done in a shared kitchen facility. So a lot of times the staff that was prepping and cooking were separate too. So it had to be something that was easy to convey to people and train people on. It's an organic product. It had pectin. It has pectin in it, so that's one thing on the national list. But other than that, all the ingredients were organic, which made it pretty simple to deal with receiving. So a few things I'll note about that style of production was we set up a system of stock formulas and template labels. And I don't know if every certifier allows you to do this, but I work with CCOF, and they understood that this was a product that was always changing. So we had a template label that basically showed, this is where the product name goes, this is where the ingredient list goes, this is where this certified organic buy statement goes, and had it, in actual words, but then pointed to where we would be changing the information instead of each time for, 20 different products that are always changing, having to submit the labels beforehand. We had a template that we could work off of that was approved. And then we would just, if we're starting to use new ingredients, I would send them the new ingredients and make sure they got approved beforehand. Sourcing and ordering ingredients, we had to go through and collect profiles and certs. We mainly used our own harvested ingredients, the fruit we grew on the ranch, so for that we had a harvest log. But the rest was mainly purchased from local growers, near us, organic growers, which in some ways can be a little trickier sometimes, making sure they have their profile and cert and that you get it on file before picking up before we would pick up a load from them. And we used a receiving log, which I'll show you. One thing we did for storing ingredients, because our main thing, as I said, we shared a kitchen and they were not all organic producers at the kitchen. So we would harvest directly into bins that have the word organic spray painted on the side. It seems like a very simple thing, but it is actually a time saver and something that's just like rolling in that compliance piece into our everyday. So then anytime that bin of fruit got moved, it always said organic no matter what. And when we sold and shipped this final product, our lot codes we would just write in a log when sending it to our own retail store or handwrite them on invoices, because as I said, we didn't use, because of this small production, we didn't use a whole fancy computer system, but that worked just fine and didn't take very much time to implement. So the receiving log, like I mentioned, this was our receiving log for jam, or is our receiving log for jam. Sorry, I keep speaking in the past. So one thing I just wanted to point out about this log, it's pretty simple. It has all the, how to fill it out on there because, like I said, staff was changing frequently. And this form we'd use for multiple uses, and that's something I always like to try to do, is create one form that's capturing the organic, but that we kind of need anyway for our own use, and instead of trying to create the least amount of forms possible. So one thing that we always needed to capture when bringing in new ingredients was how much they cost per pound. So when then I'm bringing them into the system, that we're saying the cost of goods is what the cost of goods really was. So this form merged those two things and had both, whether it was organic and what the lot code is, and then also what the price was for our own use. And from there, we went to a prep log and a production log. So the prep log, as you can see, this is capturing how much fruit they started with. So like, for example, Meyer lemons that they brought in for the day, and then at the end, how much fruit was left over. So it's tracking the raw fruit that we're using for one batch of product. And then it's also tracking how many, this was all broken down into slices, juice, sugar, pectin, etc., because we would pack it all up into batch size containers so that when we got to the kitchen, since we're paying for the rent in the kitchen, we could just, everything was weighed out and we could just dump it in a pot and get to cooking. So then it's also tracking, how much pounds of raw fruit did it take to make that much slices and juice and what have you. It's tracking here the lot number, that if you went back to the receiving log, you would see when this lot of that is lemon juice came in, and who it came in from, and then you could attach that to the invoice, and we would have the cert on file saying that it's organic. And it's also tracking who was doing this. So if there's any QC issues, I would be able to go back and ask the correct person who what had happened that day. And then the the production log was then down at the kitchen. And on here, we knew we were always producing on Saturdays and Sundays, so we could fill in what the lot number of the product was right on the prep log. And then we have it also on the production log, and here's how many pots a day we made that day. So it's tying how many pounds of fruit are needed for basically a day of production. And then the next day, when we would come and wipe down the jars, we have again our lot number, which this is for a different product, but would have matched the production and prep logs, and the number of jars that came in. So we're seeing how many jars come from that many pounds of fruit, and then other QC things that, again, 1 form 2 uses that we would need to track. And because the staff was always changing, we had just a checklist every day of all the both food safety and organic things they needed to be doing. And since we didn't have shared equipment, I just had them put down which cleaner and sanitizer they were using, so our inspector could see that we were using approved products. The 80 acres body care is quite different. So the 80 acres body care is much higher volumes. This product is our biggest selling product. We sell all across the country. Hopefully we will be exporting quite soon. So this product does use a manufacturing software system. It's, like I said before, organic and non-organic products processed on the same equipment and stored in the same warehouse. And even in this picture, we're going through the process of getting these organic, which is why you don't see any info about that on it now. But this line, our Verde line, will never be organic, but the lavender will, and we're still deciding about blood orange. So this same body balm product, there will be ones that are organic and ones that aren't. And so we're going to have to be it's a much higher level of making sure that things aren't commingling. It's more and more complicated products and ingredients, and it's a system that's been going for years and is now becoming organic. So you have a staff that's really used to doing things one way, and you're now saying, okay, now we have to do them this way. So that's been exciting to see people kind of get into it, and then also it's challenging. This is going to be a made with organic ingredient product, so that, like Christine explained, means it's 70% organic ingredients. And then we can have like non-organic essential oils in there, but we still have to, we can't have, triethyl citrate or other things that are not on the approved list in that product. So the 80 acres body care product flow is very different than the jam was. Much bigger scale, year-round production. we still have product development, and product development we have to launch in the gift market. We have to launch new products twice a year. We launch about 5 to 10 new products a year. And so one important thing is incorporating our sourcing into the formula creation. So instead of, you know, just kind of using whatever sugar for a while and then at the end saying, okay, now where's the best price of sugar? Because it's going to be organic, we have to really be looking at, okay, what organic sugar can we get at the very beginning, and then making sure we like the color and we like the feel and whatever, if it's going into, say, like a scrub or something. Getting labels and products added to our profile. And then with sourcing and ordering ingredients, it's really important that we keep the certs more well organized because there's so many more of them. And partially how we do that in terms of, basically, I guess, let me back up. For these products, there's so many more ingredients, and there's more of, like, these ingredients are organic and these ingredients aren't organic is much more important than the jam was, because jam had one non-organic ingredient. And so we have way more focus on that. So there's separate organic and non-organic receiving logs. We put all the organic ingredients into green bins or with green stickers. There's an ingredient area those are stored, and then non-organic ingredients are stored separately. So that's like kind of the main focus for this product flow, is really separating out the organic and non-organic ingredients. And like I said, we run production through Fishbowl as the manufacturing software we use. So organizing the ingredient certs, this is a process that we came up with after like 3 years. Again, something that looks so simple but has helped us immensely is keeping our ingredient certs really organized, and we do that by saving them as the company that we got it from and when it's good through. Like Christine said, it's not bad after that, but we have to check that they don't have a more current one, because they could take a ingredient off their profile, and if they don't tell us that and we don't realize it, we could then be out of compliance because we're using an ingredient they no longer certify as organic. So this has been really helpful when ordering, that we can just look at this, and instead of having to open the cert, we can just see, okay, it's good through July 2016, and then we can just order it, or it alerts the purchasing person to actually ask for their new cert. And we also, with the body care, try to work with vendors that have more than one of the products that we need, so that we don't have as many certs. And when first adding new products, we have our own Excel sheet that looks exactly like one of the 2.0 forms that CCOF requires, so one of the forms required to add a new product. And we keep this ourselves so that we have the contact of who in the organization knows what an organic cert and profile is and can email it to you, because that is not everybody, and sometimes it takes a while to find the person who knows what you're talking about, and we want to definitely be able to contact them again next year. So we keep it in a form that looks exactly like the CCOF form. So if we're adding the new product, I just copy and paste the section that's the new ingredients, put it in a new sheet, and send it to them that way, instead of having to do double paperwork. And through Fishbowl, because it's really about not commingling ingredients and keeping equipment clean when it's organic, or sanitizing between organic, non-organic, and organic, we have the part names say organic in bold. The lot numbers have a prefix that is only used for organic ingredients. And then we actually created a part name that is labor cleaning minutes, and it says in English and in Spanish that this is an organic product. You have to clean and sanitize and write it on the log. So now they're being reminded to do that, and they have to initial here that they did it, so when the person is receiving in the final product, they see, okay, they acknowledge that they've done it, and if they don't see those initials, they can go and check the cleaning log. With all of this with getting people on board to doing the correct paperwork, I've found that creating a system that there's like 2 people checking, there's a way that one person is doing it and then there's someone who ends up checking that they did it, at least for the first year, is important, because it's just a new thing. And with all paperwork, the biggest issue is we're all humans and we forget stuff, and it's trying to make sure that there's someone to remind you, because they're checking that you remembered as well. And for this, we just hang the cleaning logs on the equipment so that it's really visual instead of having it in a log that's in a notebook somewhere that people can easily forget about. So the last product I'll talk about quickly is our olive oil. So it is 100% organic. We use olives that we grow, which are all organic. But the millers have a lot more information they need to be collecting other than just the organic. It's pretty easy because there's only 3 types of oil produced per year. And the one trickier part is that we share equipment with our custom crush customers. So other olive producers do bring us their oil, and we mill their olive oil. And we mill them on our machine, and then we're making our own organic olive oil, and so we need to make sure that we can show that we clean between a non-organic customer, excuse me, and ourselves. So the main things with the production flow of our olive oil is, for our custom crush customers, we do need to collect if they say they're organic, we won't mill their olives until we have their grower cert on file, because if they say they're organic, we do both for the oil and for the body care, we run organic production first. If we have non-organic production, we'll run it after the organic. So if a custom crush customer comes to us and they say their olives are organic, we need the proof of that so that we don't end up milling incorrectly and not cleaning when we should. And we have a separate form for our McEvoy and custom crush clients that is a different color, so that if the miller gets the purple one instead of the green one, they know, okay, I have to be checking, is this organic or not organic? Because McEvoy is all organic, they could kind of just forget that possibly the olives are not organic that are coming in. And our olive oil production is, like a lot of agricultural production, is a lot at one short time of year. So it's a lot of work, almost 24-hour-a-day work for 3-4 weeks. And so trying to get these logs really just as simple and easy during that they're not wasting time having to fill out a ton of paperwork. And I'll talk about these other 2 as I go through. So it's a really easy form. For McEvoy fruit, the organic box is already checked off since all of our olives are organic. And there's things like we just have them put in the total weight of the olive bins and then the bin weight, and then after production is done in like March, they can go through and do the net weights. That's just a little time saver. Same thing with the liters started in a tank and the liters in the end. So once it goes through and becomes oil, they fill the tanks, and then we can see, okay, how much was the yield, and they can fill that out later. And this is all the information that they want for the milling details, but we just put it on one form so they don't have to track so many different forms. And the mill sanitation log, like I said, the biggest thing really in terms of compliance is making sure that between non-organic and organic fruit, everything, we have 2 different lines, and we try to keep our custom crush all on one line. It's uses a stone mill, and a lot of our custom crush customers come to us because we have that old way of producing olive oil, but some want the newer equipment, and so we will use the line that we run our organic if they request it. and then we just have to fill this out. And so we have, you know, the different ways of sanitizing, and then they just go through and check that they did the entire line 1 or line 2. And from this, just to go back for a second, so the tanks are filled with the oil, and then as the year goes by, we're bottling. So we're holding it and then bottling later. So on each tank, we have a log once we're moving oil around. And then when we bottle, we have a log that says which tank they took the oil from. And then it has, you know, 375 milliliter bottles, 500 milliliter bottles, and the other size gallon, half gallon, and they just write in, you know, they made 200, 375 milliliter bottles and give it a lot code based on when they bottled it. So then at the end, you could track all the way back to the tanks and then how much was harvested. So it's like it seems like such a complex thing to have to track all this information, but it's just capturing it as you go in these tiny little chunks. And then at the end, if you need it, when you need to go back, you can, but you don't have to think of like the whole thing the whole time. So inspections, we found mainly that these are the things inspectors want to see, and our inspectors always work with us. We really use them as a resource. And I'm going to finish up so you guys can ask questions and not go over this in too much detail. But some of the best practices, I'll just say briefly, are tailoring compliance to your skill level. It doesn't have to be on the computer. It can be on paper. I've heard so many people say that they're not organic because they don't know how to use a computer, and you really can do it in paper if that's what you need to do. Staying organized, weaving the paperwork into our daily operations. And really, I think what we've learned is I'm a system person. Not everyone, not our organic, the miller for our olive oil, she isn't as much. So why have her develop this whole paperwork system? I do it, and then she just has to be on top of making sure it works. So if you're not a system person, I think it's worth it to hire someone who is, so that they can help you with getting it set up, and then you just have to keep it filled out. And checking records throughout the year is a big one. Instead of waiting until right before your inspection, just make it a practice that every 2 weeks you're just checking to make sure everything is filled out as it should. And I'm going to stop here because I spoke at length and want to leave some time for questions.
All right, great. Thank you very much. That was great to see all the different forms and processes and tips too. So I think I'm going to open questions up to both Ellen and Christine, so feel free to jump in, either of you, if you have a good answer. There were a number of people that had questions regarding sort of the purging process. One specifically, how much organic product do we need in order to purge a system? And another just wanting to know a little more about the best purging and cleaning processes for cleaning equipment.
I guess I will take that. Ellen, do you use a purge at all in yours?
We don't, so yeah, you would be best.
Yeah, and I'm sorry because I don't know the exact answer. Something in my head wants to say 50 pounds, but that sounds a little bit excessive for enough to purge a product. So yeah, I guess it would just depend on what you need. If you are going to be doing that process, and I would definitely contact your certifier about that first. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if there's an exact number, and I'm not sure if certifiers have kind of different things that they might think are okay for pounds.
Okay, great. And what are some best practices with purging and cleaning out lines between organic and non-organic systems, particularly cleaning?
I would say, I don't know in terms of best practices if it's like tracking it versus actually doing it, but when you're inspected the first time, I think that's a great thing to have something that you're proposing you do, and then show it to your inspector, and they'll be really good at looking through and saying, well, is this part of it going to get cleaned, and how are you going to clean that part of it? And through that process, you can make a really exact how you're going about cleaning that piece of equipment. And it takes time, like pulling apart a lot of these equipments takes time, which is where maybe having a separate line then starts to look like it is economically more feasible, or just limiting the days that you're doing non-organic so that you can chunk it all together and only have to you have to clean less often in terms of that, like really thorough, making sure it's all now can use organic production. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Yes, that is. And then we also have an organic wine bottler that's online who is wondering if they need to keep an active log of the organic product that's coming in and out of their facility.
Christine?
Yeah.
Do you have more?
Yeah, do they need to keep it? So that kind of, I think I'm understanding that question as kind of in relation to your audit trail, and so that's a yes. You know, Ellen pointed out, which I thought was really good, toward her last, I think one of her last slides was talking about an in-out balance performed by inspectors. They want to make sure that the amount of organic that you source kind of equals the amount that you sell, taking into consideration maybe some loss that will happen during production. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, that was great.
Okay.
And we also have a coffee roaster that has a question about sort of the grinding process. So does grinding organic beans in the grinder that grinds or roasts conventional beans count as commingling?
I'm sorry, can you say that one?
If you're grinding organic beans in a grinder that that grinds conventional beans, would that be considered commingling, or would you need to have a process to avoid commingling if you were doing that?
Yes, that is the purge process. So you would, I mean, you could, you know, disassemble and clean that grinder. I generally don't see people do that, but I feel like I had a nut butter client that did that a long time ago. They opted to take the grinder apart and clean it before an organic run. Or, you know, in your case, the coffee producer, what you can do is run a certain amount of organic product through the grinder, and then you would have to sell that product as organic, but that is essentially your cleaner. And just to go back on the amount, back to that question that I didn't quite know, I brought up a resource that we leave it up to the client, because they're the expert on their piece of equipment, of how much organic product needs to be run through that purge system to essentially purge it of the non-organic product that was just ran.
Okay, great. And kind of going back to the coffee roasting, would that sort of process of purging be the same for a roaster as a grinder?
The purging process?
Or
Yes.
if you're using equipment to...
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And there is also a question about the documentation that's required for made with organic claims, specifically in recertifying.
Can you get a little more specific?
That's the question we have. I don't know if that was your question out there. If you could type in a little more clarification, we can re-ask it.
Yeah, I would need clarification on that too, Ellen. Thanks.
Okay. And then along the same lines of made with organic claims, can some of the ingredients in the made with organic claim be conventional, or can they be on the national list?
Yes. So, you know, an example might be if you are, okay, first of all, the items on the national list are on that list as allowed in organic production. So that's fine. And then, you know, say, for example, you made a granola bar, something very simple, and you were using organic oats and organic peanuts, and then, you know, non-organic honey and non-organic oil and non-organic raisins. So you would qualify for the organic claim because you know, more than 30% of your ingredients are not organic, but those oats and those nuts make up over 70% of your product. So you could say made with organic nuts and peanuts on the front label. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
And
yeah,
I'm new to the Made with Organic world too, because we started this with our body care and was pretty confused. And I think I have it now at a little synopsis, and correct me if I'm wrong, Christine. But there's like two parts of the national list that are for processors, and there's the non-agricultural substances allowed as ingredients. So that's the 205.605. You can find it if you just Google national list, it'll come up. And then that you would have, so if it's a non-agricultural substance, like I was talking about triethyl citrate, it would have to be on that list to be able to be in my product. But then there's this other list that's 205.606, which is non-organically produced agricultural products allowed in organic products. And so that's like certain types of peppers are allowed even if they're non-organic in a 95% organic product because they are not available as organic. Well, for the Made with Organic people, you can have agricultural products that are non-organic, whether or not they're on 205.606. Does that make sense? That's kind of how I understand it now.
Yeah, that's great, Ellen. And you did say something which is the Made with Organic labeling claim is incredibly nuanced, and that's why you know, I mentioned to please give it some thought and even, you know, talk to your certifier or get that product submitted as early as you can. It really helps to have, you know, the National Organic Program webpage does have, you know, links to what is considered Made with Organic claim, and I really highly recommend, you know, printing that out or something to reference it because of the many nuances in that claim. So, you know, yeah, I don't even know if I want to dive into it that much, but you know, the 70-30 percentage is how you qualify, and then yeah, referencing those national lists are a good way to go.
Okay, and could you speak really briefly on what type of documentation you need for the Made with Organic claim?
Yeah, for the organic ingredients, you need organic certificates, current and complete supplier certificates. And then for the non-organic ingredients, we need to make sure that you know, you'll have to have manufacturer verification that they do not contain any of the big three that I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation. That's really important. So the big three, again, they're not produced using sewage sludge, radiation, and do not contain any GMOs. That's even for the non-organic products. Yeah. Great.
So thank you very much. Thank you both for your great presentations on the kind of the basics of organic certification, and then going into a little more detail on the forms and processes. That was really helpful. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to be here with us. We're just going to go over a few more wrap-up slides. So before we sign off, couple additional resources for our audience. There's the CCOF website, the National Organic Program, and the Organic Trade Association websites are all really great resources. We've included a link to some example forms to get you started on your audit trail. And there's also a link to the national list of allowed and prohibited substances. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot of certifiers out there, so if you are interested in certifying with us, you can contact Jane Wade. She's great. She's our new applicant representative and can answer all your questions. But also do your homework and check out other certifiers out there to see what's the best fit for you. Upcoming events, we have a couple in-person upcoming events in December and January. If you're in the California region, we'll be doing a San Francisco wholesale produce market tour on December 10th and a Go Organic workshop in Healdsburg, California. And also, if you're interested in learning more about organic label development, it's another one of those very nuanced things. We had a webinar earlier this year, and the recording is available on our website. So thank you again to Ellen and Christine, and to our audience. We'd like to ask that you fill out your evaluation form. It helps us get good ideas for upcoming events as well as improve our events in the future. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at the CCOF Foundation. So thank you all and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.